Hello, everyone. I'm Tamara Banks, and welcome to From Moment to Movement. This is a program where we try to talk about capturing this moment that we're in and creating a movement. My special guest today is Marcus Coleman. He is, among other things, the vice chair of the Fulton County um, Reparations Task Force. Thank you so much for being here, Marcus. We got a lot to talk about, but first I want to talk to you about reparations in Fulton County. Can you kind of give me thumbnail sketch about what you guys are up to right now and the latest at this moment?
We have been in existence since April of 2021. Myself working with Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr., who is responsible for drafting the legislation to erect this task force. It's the first on a county level across the nation. There are a number of municipalities. Again, we are the first county, and there's a handful of states who have been engaged in doing this work. Shout out to California, who they have completed their harm report, and actually that transcended into state legislation that failed last legislative session because it did not have the support of the California Congressional Black Caucus. So you have those of us that were helping to support the erection of these efforts, and then when it came time to put pen to paper, to put policy on record, we did not have the support. We are now, when I say we as a whole, because I'm speaking about the state of California, we in Fulton County are nearing our completion. We are nearing the completion of our harm report. But unlike California as a state, where they have to convince the state legislature, we need 4 votes out of 7 commissioners. So it's going to be interesting because just sprinkling this, the senior chair of the Fulton County Reparations Task Force, Rob Pitts, he voted for us to become in existence, but he was asked by WSB Channel 2, did he support reparations? And he says he fundamentally doesn't support it. So once again, we have those of us that look like us that were happy to ride the wave of creating these study groups. But to me, it could be classified as sometimes a study group that's on the road to nowhere. But we'll see. All I can do is speak what's actually out there already. So in the next couple of months, we will be completed with that harm report. Then it will be on our task force to meet and come up with some political demands. And then those political demands have to be accepted and then voted upon out of the 7 Fulton County commissioners.
We're kind of in an interesting moment in time right now as we see DEI programs going away, loans and grants that were given to maybe students and programs that support DEI. Before we get to that specific issue in this new administration, how can those movements by this administration impact the reparation movement?
Well, I mean, I would be all for the removal of these programs if there was a reparations package that was put in place prior to, meaning the umbrella that these programs are being removed is because everything's fair now, right? Everything's equal. Well, there's no way. I mean, first of all, the numbers, prove that that's not factual. But you can't have equality without the repair. So how does this affect the reparations movement? Nationally, it is dead for 4 years. Simple as that on a national level. But one of the things about local reparations, some folks who are advocates for reparations were stating that this local reparations movement is going to affect negatively the national. Um, I've been pushing back on that for years. Uh, every nook and cranny of this country owes. Every government entity of this country owes. A, 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 a municipality, a county, a state does not substitute for what the nation owes. And to those who were critics of this local reparations movement, I have to ask them, well, how you feeling about it now for these next 4 years? Because the local reparations movement is the only movement that is going to exist for these next 4 years. And put a pin on this, it is my position that you take all the harm reports, all the reports from the various government jurisdictions across this nation, and then you throw it on the desk of the federal government as further legal proof as to why this nation must pay. So we're in a unique period, but the local reparations movement still stands strong, in my opinion.
Why do you think I was just thinking about this last night, the movement to reparations for Japanese Americans who were in internment camps? It didn't, of course, I wasn't around then, or I didn't know exactly firsthand what happened, but it seemed like that seemed to.
You don't have to go all the way back there, man. In 2015, reparations was paid to Iranian hostages. We're talking about 10 years ago now.
Right.
I mean, 10 years ago now. Rep, that might be my fault. Sorry, buddy.
No, you're fine.
Reparations, there is already a blueprint, and I believe that's what you're alluding to, that this country has executed. Um, I guess it's the massiveness in nature that makes people think that our plight is something different. No. Reparations has been paid, and again, as early as 10 years ago.
So what's the problem?
The problem is Black folks in this country were always told that we've got to be better, twice as good as the next person, right? And I honestly think that's a disadvantage that we pass down to our children sometimes. But it's no secret about our greatness. It's no secret about our excellence. And it has been a strategic plot and plan to keep those of us down in this country, because if we are ever on an equal basis, uh, then a lot of people who will now benefit from the removal of these DEI programs, they could continue their false sense of superiority.
Right. Right. And how dare they? Let me ask you, because you have so much more to say other than about reparations, just reparations. Tell me about, in this moment, when we saw just a few years ago the murder of George Floyd captured on cell phone camera, went viral all over the world. The news about Breonna Taylor, so many other unreported, unarmed Black people killed by police, the emergence and evolution of Black Lives Matter. Can we take this moment and not just learn from it, but also to really create a movement?
You said it, so I can't help but speak on it. I'm not a big fan of the phrase known as Black Lives Matter. I'm not a big fan for a couple of reasons, but I, with being out here in the struggle, I understand why it became a rally call. But it's, to me, one of the most subservient calls that one could make, because Black folks are the original people of the earth. And if we are going around saying that our lives matter, who are we saying it to? Because without Black life, there would be no life. Don't get me wrong. I get it. I understand the rally call. Um, but technically, Black Lives Matter started as a way to recognize the LGBTQIA plus Black community. And it came along at a great time. And no matter my work or comrades who were in the struggles work, everybody's work got thrown up under this Black Lives Matter umbrella. And I just, I think that's a little disheartening, because again, I understand why it was being said, but we got to start understanding who we are, and words are powerful. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But that's, I think that's an interesting, words do matter.
Yeah.
I'm in a business where words matter. And I think the idea, as you alluded to, is that as soon as, when white people say, well, all lives matter, well, as soon as somebody gives a dang about a Black man, unarmed, Black man or woman armed, just because I felt threatened as a police officer, then Black lives really will matter. But you're right, we all stem from, we were all Black. But today, in today's context of we don't all matter. So to that point, taking a step further, is there a way, whether it's through Black Lives Matter or any other organization or individual to, for lack of a better term, organize and truly create change? And is it done differently from when we instilled change during the civil rights movement?
With having the privilege and opportunity to work with a lot of the so-called national leaders, um, we mentioned off camera, a good friend of mine, Attorney Crump. I consider him a good friend. Um, a lot of times, the relationship with Crump has given me the opportunity to meet some of these families on a national level. Um, in conjunction with some of the families that I've been able to come across on my own. Um, it feels at times that we're just tragedy hopping
Mm,
until we change the ink. And we'll talk about it a little later. One of the initiatives in my organization is Save Ourselves. It's called Attack the Ink. Until we change the legislation, we can topple statues all that we want. We can remove statues all we want. But until we change the statutes, we're tragedy hopping. We're giving the illusion of clout chasing.
mhm, mhm.
We're putting money in family members who have been affected by these tragedies' bank accounts, but we're not preventing the next tragedy.
So it's all reactionary.
It's mostly reactionary.
Mhm.
Um, and we keep having a emotion of being flabbergasted and shocked and in awe when I would use the word justice. I stopped using justice years ago because, in my opinion, justice is not in the courtroom. But for the sake of this conversation, we keep saying, we're not receiving justice. Well, if you didn't change the statute in tragedy A, and then tragedy B through Z comes along and it is identical to A, what makes you think legally you're going to receive so-called justice? Some people are comfortable with this current equation. They could put a little money in folks' pockets and they receive a little money themselves. But that's not true change. This is a well-designed system. People say the system is broken. The system is not flawed in one bit. It is working just as it is designed. And until we change that,
Mhm.
you'll always hear folks leading marches screaming justice for X and justice for Y and justice for Z. But truth be told, no justice is being found anywhere, in my personal opinion.
You're right. The system is operating just as it was intended.
Absolutely.
So what does that change look like? Is it changing laws? Is it changing policy? Is
It's
it
people dying off.
mindset? Okay.
I mean, it's a taught false sense of supremacy. It's a false ideology that people have that they pass down. Some pass down, but those people are dying off. Um, the Minister Farrakhan, made a good point one time, and he says that there are certain people in our community that need to be cut out like a cancer. They need to be ostracized. We have a lot of the so-called gatekeepers who are comfortable with their organizations and their relationships with specific administrations, where no matter what's happening, the checks are flowing. No matter what's happening,
Mm.
you're on the guest list, for the chicken, fish, or vegan meals.
Right.
It's too much plate scraping and not enough boot pounding for me. Um, for instance, during this previous administration, the Biden Harris administration, to me, our people, we get wooed by tokenism to our own detriment. Oh, yeah, it's great to have a sister, first generation American sister, um, in the White House as vice president. Yeah, it's great to have a Supreme Court justice that looks like my aunt, but one rising up through the masses does nothing for the whole group, especially when those ones that are awarded what I like to call positions of tokenism, especially when they become part of the very system that we're supposed to be fighting. There was no pressure put on the previous administration. We've got to learn that me and you can be friends, man. But if I've got a job to do as being one that highlights the inconsistencies of a system, if you happen to be a part of that system, that doesn't mean I stop doing my job.
Mhm.
You know, you give me a couple of guest passes every other month, then I stop using my voice. Same thing happened when former President Barack Obama was in office. We oohed and awed and marveled over his achievement, but we forgot our collective goal. And I think that's my biggest problem with some of my colleagues right now. I call them the "where do we go from now" meetings, because that's what everyone's having. And what are we going to do now? Well, if you weren't holding this country's feet to the fire 4 years ago, then I don't want to organize with you. I mean, I really don't, because I don't have, I'm not selective in my advocacy. And I think that's our biggest problem. And, it's a tactic that is known to pacify us and dilute the potency of change.
So you're saying it's not enough for little black and brown girls and boys to see a black family in the White House, or particularly a Supreme Court justice on the bench. Now, if there's a position that has some juice to it, that is a
Well,
position.
too much juice, because a lifetime appointment is absolutely asinine.
Well, right.
I mean, but I mean,
Right.
don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Right.
Let me
I
not
get it. I get
let
that.
me not belittle imagery,
Hmm.
which is the reason why there are Caucasian Jesus Christ all across the
There you
nation,
go.
right? I understand imagery is powerful,
Hmm.
but I think probably the best thing that comes to my mind when thinking about trying to explain myself here is using Dr. King, our homeboy here in the A. We love to talk about that 33-year-old I have a dream king, but fail to truly talk about 33 was assassinated at 36 years old, right?
Hmm.
So when I say the 33-year-old king, I mean that's young. 36 is young.
Right.
But we don't talk about the realization of maybe things weren't being done in a manner that is conducive to real change. What am I talking about? When it's quoted that Dr. King says he feared that he's integrated his people into a burning house. We have become what we claim to collectively despise. And we have become that through positions of tokenism, which could be translated into imagery. Yes, it's important for us to have certain positions. And maybe what I'm speaking is not. No, I'm not going to say it's not factual. What good is that position if you were then just to become a part of that very system that you're supposed to be fighting? Now, how can
So,
one fight that from that position would be the point,
mhm,
you know.
fighting from the inside, that there's some value to that.
For instance, the former uh, vice president,
Hmm.
it was said that she was an ally of reparations. Matter of fact, in 2019, when she ran for president the first time before she became VP, at a National Action Network breakfast, she was asked a loaded question by Sharpton. If HR 40 passes Congress, which it never will, reparations is not something that is going to be done from a legislative manner in Congress, in my opinion. It's going to have to be an executive order. until enough people die off. But the question was, if HR 40 passes and if you become president, would you sign that bill? She said, yes, I would sign that bill. Well, we know HR 40 didn't pass, and we know that she didn't become the president, but she did become vice president. What's my point here? Did it feel like we had an ally for reparations as the vice president in the White House? No. Was there any attempt by the vice president to persuade this antiquated president that we had? No. Was there any pressure from our community put on the vice president to do that? No. Why? Because we were just happy that she was there. So I guess, I hope I'm making my point.
Yeah.
The position in imagery is one thing, but again, if you can boldly stand in 2019 and say, if I become president, I'll sign the reparations bill, but then you're the vice president for the next 4 years and you don't even utter reparations, and we don't demand that you do.
So that leads to my next question before we talk about save ourselves, because I know we're running short on time. Is so what? No, this is great. How do we demand and hold our folks accountable once they get in office or in a position of influence? Maybe people just don't really know how to do that.
How do we hold them accountable?
Hmm.
Um,
Who do we talk to? Who do we just call the White House or the Vice President's office when it was
well, you got to
impeachment?
understand, I didn't have Joe Biden's cell phone on speed dial, but I know my partner, Attorney Crump, did, and I know Reverend Sharpton did. I know, and these are people that again are friends of mine, or colleagues. Um, until the damn gatekeepers start acting as the advocates that they claim to be amongst the masses, until they pick up the phone, or until while they're having tea or whatever lunch they may have with these individuals, we've got too many people that are selling our people out behind closed doors. It's just that simple. Um, but like now in this administration, these very people, some of these very people that I just named, now they want to call the masses to come out and rally. Hell no. What happened to that 4 years ago? What happened to that a year ago? You would think one could be more successful with allies in the White House if you just put a little pressure on them. And sometimes, ma'am, that's all that's needed. Some political cushion, political pressure in order for those to execute. Some of these people that we've gotten in these positions, they already have a number of things that they have to fight just being in that position alone. It would be beneficial and helpful if they could point to the masses and say, hey, this is what the people want. We've got to learn to be engaged with our so-called colleagues just as much as our so-called enemies.
We've talked about Dr. King. I wonder what his grown children think about this moment in time and how they would do things differently than maybe his father.
I have a lot of respect for the two remaining King children. I have had a number of conversations with both Martin Luther King III and Sister Bernice. Sister Bernice, Reverend Dr. Bernice King, to me, who has the true spirit of her father. Um, I can't help but be me. It is disheartening sometimes to see Martin Luther King III being uh, dragged across the nation as a puppet for um, one of the national civil rights leaders here. And what I mean is, when it comes to the King celebrations, you don't see them together um, as much. You see one with another gentleman using the King's family by way of King III, and you see Bernice holding down the fort. So with that said, I know sometimes Bernice might not care for some of the rhetoric that I spew, but I must applaud her for something that I saw recently. There's a trend that seems to be taking place over the last couple of years with the whole AI movement or the AI technology, and that is having these pictures of like Dr. King at a party, Dr. King in the club promoting the next party. When there's a sister who's gets famous now. I don't particularly rock with her music, called Sexy Red, but she put a picture out for the national holiday of Dr. King, and it was like Dr. King and her were together. I'm gonna say together, I mean, she had her hands on his chest, and Bernice took to social media and said how disrespectful this was, and had some choice words. And I give credit to that sister because I know one of the people who works with this sister. She's a good friend of mine. But the artist known as Sexy Red apologized and took the post down. Um, Never before would you have had to even have to engage the public in that kind of confrontation because it was pretty much understood. I say this all the time with some of the criticism that our younger generation receives. Um, in my opinion, they are the most fearless generation that we've ever run across. Sometimes the most fearless due to their own detriment. Um, to me, where the problem has come in is, I mean, we can't talk about our youth without pointing the finger back at their elders. Um, Too many of us have gotten comfortable in certain positions. Too many of us have gotten comfortable with allowing uh, others and technology to educate our own children. Um, and if those two things can be considered true, then what the hell do you think the result is going to be? Um, but because of this information age that we're in, because information cannot be hid from our children as it was from our ancestors, no matter what books they're trying to take off the shelves. Um, we're in a changing of the guards. And I just turned 50 last year. It is on us to provide resources, education, and cover for the next generation if we truly want to see this change. But I am cautious in prematurely celebrating that kind of change victory because I just collectively, I don't know if we are willing to engage in the sacrifice that is necessary. Um,
As a whole, the entire country, or young people, or a certain age group?
that the sacrifice, I'm talking about Black folks.
Gotcha.
I'm talking about now with the younger generation, everything's about the bag. Everybody, social media, you could be whoever you want to be, even though that's not who you are. So the younger generation has a false perception on what it takes to actually make it to begin with. It's a whole fake it if you make it, fake it till you make it kind of mentality. But again, I can't just point the finger at the younger generation because we're a big cause of that. That's why this era, not even era, this administration, with all of the ills that are taking place right out the gate, to me should be a straight slap in the face to our people. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are other groups that are being attacked, but one would have to say in these slew of executive orders, I would think that Black folks are kind of at the top of the totem pole when it comes to who they're targeting. I know it's the big thing about the transgenders in the military. Listen, I don't like mixing one's sexual preference with one's ethnic makeup. That's just asinine to me. And I hate how the Black struggle and the gay struggle has, sometimes get intertwined. When you deal with the criminal justice system and the disparities and the enforcers of that system, meaning the former patty rollers, which are known as police officers, the patty rollers were those who went to catch the runaway enslaved individuals. But when they split your head, they're not splitting it because of who you're sleeping with in your bedroom, right? They don't have that information firsthand. They're splitting it because of what you look like. So that's my reason for I can't stand when the struggles are infused. But yeah, I would say Black people. I wonder. I question if we are willing, and I'm not necessarily speaking the ultimate sacrifice, but hell, We love to talk about boycotts. The Montgomery boycott was one of the most successful, and those folks stopped riding the bus for over a year straight. We can't even get folks to stop going to a certain store for a week straight. So I mean, I hear about the boycotts right now for these businesses who are removing their DEI programs. Well, I mean, a boycott means nothing if it's not collective. Actually, if it's not collective, it just shows uh, how non-unified our community really is.
So we have talked about a number of things, not just reparations, but before we wrapped up in the next couple minutes that we have, tell me quickly about Save Ourselves.
Save Ourselves is a political human civil rights organization with a concentration on youth athletics and youth mentorship. The overall umbrella of it is Black liberation. After transitioning from National Action Network, there were some specific areas that I wanted to focus more on, and I also wanted to be free to concentrate on initiatives that affected my area and that were near and dear to my heart, and that weren't a part of some political strategy as it relates to others' personal gains. So we've existed since 2014. Save Ourselves is a little bit different. It's we have a core of volunteers, but with each initiative, we just we will put the call out for these initiatives, and it is specifically volunteer based. It is not membership based. It is those who of like minds and spirits around whatever issues we're engaged in, and we ask for the public's help during that time.
That's awesome. And where can people find it? Save Ourselves.
You go to saveourselves.org. On social media, I have my social media attached to Save Ourselves. So my social media is Marcus T. Coleman, and there'll be links, that would take you to either one of our initiatives or give you an overview of the history of the organization.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah, thank
Mr.
you.
Marcus Coleman. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank
This has been really fun. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm Tamara Banks on for Moment to Movement. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.